You're ready to graduate from your university program or that 12-week boot camp you signed up for. You've slugged it out, finished every assignment to a T, and you're ready to get your career off the ground. Now comes the big decision, putting your resume out there. Do I apply for a Java position? What about Python? Hold on, didn't Google just lay off their entire Python team? Is that such a good idea? That's when you remember that JavaScript was the one that really tickled your fancy.
Surely I can find something there.
In this video, I'm going to show you why it doesn't really matter what you work on. Instead, if you want to become a successful pro coder, there are 3 simple and resounding steps you can take to succeed. Step 1, learn one thing and learn it well. You need to be fantastically good at something. Okay, maybe not fantastically, but you should at least have a deep understanding of how it works and how to use it. That sort of thing. Don't read over a single tutorial and skip over actually doing the tutorial and then call that your thing. No, pick something. To be a pro coder, there should be one thing you can really knock out of the park. You don't have to be the world's expert, but you should be able to traipse through a stack of standard tutorials with ease. Since you've already decided upon JavaScript, imagine if that were React.js. Perhaps you absolutely love its virtual DOM and the way it magically updates the UI every time you update the underlying state of the system. Here's the thing, you may really like it, but you're probably not an expert at it, at least not yet. So as a part of step 1, you must carve out time every week, if not every day, to grow your knowledge. Let Google be your friend to dig up new tutorials you haven't done yet and begin stacking your skill set.
But Greg, what if the shop I want to work for doesn't use React.js?
Don't worry, there's a solution for that, which we'll get to in a minute. But before we do, it's imperative that you complete enough online tutorials for React.js such that when you go to Google and enter React.js tutorial in the search bar, you begin to see ones you've already done showing up. You're even having to click on page 2 or page 3 of the search results to find ones you haven't done yet. Greg, Google no longer has paginated results, but instead does continuous scrolling, and the search engines are updating wildly based upon AI-served answers. Okay, yeah, that's true, but you get the idea. You should devote a solid chunk of time to building up your skill set in React.js, because it's always good to be great at something. Now, how are we going to turn this into a skill set that recruiters will be unable to resist and start knocking your door down to make you an offer? That's where step 2 comes in. Step 2, use your knowledge of one to bootstrap the other. Scout out some of React.js's biggest competitors and begin doing some of the same tutorials over there. First, using the same tooling, create similar projects. Did you use Node.js to set up your React application? Then dig in and find out how to use Node.js to configure an Angular app. Pick out the simplest features you implemented in React, and then dig in and figure out how to do the same with Angular. In case it's not obvious, you're using your knowledge of React to bootstrap yourself into Angular. But with one key distinction, you aren't attempting to go deep this time. Don't worry about learning how to configure OAuth in Angular, even if you clobbered that with React. It's not vital that you do every little thing. Instead, you're trying to gather up a cursory knowledge of Angular, enough that if you needed to, you could dig in deeper in the future. This is what it means to use your knowledge of one toolkit to bootstrap another. Since you understand the underlying concept of React.js, you'll probably pick up the basics of Angular faster. And this brings us to step 3. Expand your skills at a linear rate. Pick one other toolkit, perhaps this time Vue.js, and do the same thing. Bootstrap it just the same. In this case, using Node.js. Implement the same set of features that you did both in React and in Angular. Notice how I'm saying the word same everywhere? You're learning a new toolkit and doing it step by step, feature by feature at a certain pace. You're covering ground you've already covered before. You're also reusing tools you're already familiar with. Node.js? Check. Basic controller? Check. Calling server-side APIs and rendering the results? Check. There's a word we use when the new thing we implement is line-by-line equivalent to the old thing. Linear. Instead of digging in and learning wholly new concepts, engaging in high-information discovery, we're now looking up, how do I do this and how do I do that in reference documentation? Or skimming through beginner-level tutorials instead of slowing down and reading them word for word. And this is a good thing, because what you're doing now is what recruiters and hiring managers absolutely need. Wait a second, did I say recruiters and hiring managers? Didn't see that coming, did you? To be a pro coder, you need to be able to solve problems. And at this stage, this is just what you're doing. You started with Rule 1, where you dug in deep to learn a toolkit. That's intense work that is tool specific. And while that's good, it's not necessarily the thing that moves the needle on getting a gig at a shop, writing code and raking in the big bucks. What shops are looking for is people that are able to solve problems on any stack. And the odds that a given shop with the right people and culture for you are using the exact same stack that you're most talented with isn't exactly, shall we say, 50-50. Toolkits and tech stacks evolve so rapidly that pinning your entire career to one given toolkit is actually quite risky. Instead, it's better to learn how to grow and evolve such that you could join any team, ramp up on their tech, and affect change. And this is where many people get bogged down. We all realize to some degree that we need to know more than just one stack, so we try to become an expert at 2 or 3. The thing is, the amount of time to become an expert compounds against you. You get buried deep trying to gather the same knowledge on your second tech stack that you spent on the first. And that's your first mistake in making yourself hireable. You don't really need to be an expert at several stacks. Instead, you only need cursory knowledge.
Doesn't cursory mean superficial? That doesn't sound adequate.
Yes, cursory does mean superficial. Would I want to tell a hiring manager that I have superficial knowledge? No! Okay, you want to have an adequate knowledge of multiple stacks, but poised with the ability to dive deep should a particular shop hire you and want to leverage your talents. That's where step 3 really pays off. Your deep knowledge of React gave you the words and phrases you needed to dig through the search engines and find the reference material to learn another stack. Hopefully your experience of digging in deeper to things like OAuth and seeing how complex that can be also gave you the idea to perhaps skip that one when expanding into other stacks. But it also left you knowing that you could probably expand into that if you needed to. So once you complete steps 1 through 3, you can nicely brush up your LinkedIn profile and signal that you have a deep understanding of React while possessing functional awareness of Angular and Vue.js. That right away should signal that you contain more than a teen hacker's knowledge of coding. And by having listed at least 3 stacks of commensurate value, you're also sending the vibe that you're truly a pro coder with hireable skills. And this entire back and forth about learning tech stacks is exactly the sort of thing you can lean into the next time you nab an interview. You see, recruiters aren't going to ask you,
How do you implement an OAuth secured endpoint in a React.js based application that was built using Webpack?
and I've heard that those Google-style questions of, if you were a mouse trapped in a cup of coffee half full of cream, how would you get out, are gone. By learning one tech stack well and using that skill set to expand into a couple other tech stacks with a more reserved degree, then allows you to grow in a linear fashion and round out your resume with legitimate skills. And the way you grew your skill set is actually a story you should be proud of and ready to share with the recruiter the next time you nab an interview. But to see exactly how to share your story of how you grew your skill set, you need to watch this video next.